for joining me. This is Pastor Errol Williams. I'm so excited once again to have the opportunity to join you for another, let's call it online Bible studies, but our focus tonight is on men's issues, if you like, or issues surrounding men or men's focus. We have been having some amazing discussion over the last 3 weeks, and tonight I have Clive Lewis with us, and he's going to take us on the subject of resilience. So if you have any questions or any comment, you can begin to put those in the chat room for us, Facebook, YouTube, and we will begin to look at that. So thank you for joining us. It's Friday night, it's Men's Focus, and our topic is on resilience. I'm so excited to have the opportunity to be with you. But just before I introduce you to Clive, and he will introduce himself, and he runs a very successful business, in fact, and if you're interested in training that his company does, then you could indeed ask questions relating to that. We do have an amazing service provided for us in the Church of God of Prophecy around counseling and support for people during this time of COVID lockdown. So if you'd like to find out more, the phone number is there, 0121, and it's 358-2231, or Sentient. That's the name of the service that we're offering, Sentient, at cogop.org.uk, or you can go to the website and find information there as well, how to actually contact the team. Well, I don't know whether there's any spaces left for tomorrow morning's worship foundation course. I can't wait to get to bed, to wake up in the morning to be at this amazing session. Over 160 people have already registered. I thought there would be around 200 people. Maybe by the time the show finished, it will be 200 people. So if you're interested, I think there is space, because I haven't canceled the registration yet, and I'm the one that needs to do it. So space is still open until this show is finished. So you need to go on over to cogop.com or cogop.org.uk and register. It's free. What are you waiting for? Make sure you come back, right? And we've got Minister Carol Clark and Pastor Lloyd Gordon and lots of other things that will be going on. So come and join us tomorrow. And the time is 11 a.m. till 1:15 p.m. So I look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow if you make it. Speak to you there. And just to let you know as well, we've got our men's conference. Wow, it's going to be awesome. We've got Bishop Tedra Paolo, a national presiding bishop for the UK, Holland, and Belgium. We also have with us Bishop Adrian Valak, one of the most powerful speakers in the world, by the way. Well, to me anyway. And he'll be talking to us about intentional leadership. If you indeed want to join us, male or female, the ID is there. Just come straight on in. You don't need any password. You don't need no registration either. Just come straight in, right? If you want to find out more, the leaflet's there. That's all the information that we need to give you. And it's all there. But if you want to contact me, you can do so. But if you have any questions or any comments that you'd like to put to the panel next week, then those questions and comments and ideas have to come in before then. We're not taking them on the day per se. And I use the word per se, could change our mind and so on. Just to let you know also, if you're interested in joining us in the local church in Wembley or in our region with any of our prayer services, come and join us. And the details are there. It's also on our website, cogop.com. So come and join us. We also have our Sunday services, 9:30 a.m. to 11:30. The way we do it basically is that we take half an hour. First half an hour is to do with prayer. The second half an hour is a 20 minutes teaching and a 10-minute Q&A. And then we spend an hour for the main service, worship and ministry of the Word of God. And it's been going pretty well, so I'm so grateful for that. So thank you very much for joining us tonight. We are going to head on over to Clive, who is going to share with us. Was glad to see so many of you joining us on Facebook and also on YouTube, and those of you that are on the website. It's Friday night. I know it's busy. I know a lot of things are going on, but you know what? It's 9 o'clock, right? And most people run their things from 7:30 to 9:30. So that's the reason why we went for 9 o'clock. It's late in the evening, but you know what? It's the time that most people might be winding down. And why not wind down with an amazing conversation with us? So I'm going to head on over to Brother Mike and Brother Clive. He's going to introduce himself to you. I'll be back a little later and he will explain to you what's going on tonight. And so we don't have the panel like we did before. That will be next week, hopefully. So Clive is on his own tonight. He's going to spend some time, go through resilience, and then we're going to take some Q&A, and he will give you the format and go from there. So welcome, Clive, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Errol, and good evening, everyone. Many of you may know that I've been working with and supporting Errol in men's ministry for a number of years. That's my passion, certainly. And when we were speaking about this evening, the thoughts that came to my mind was to focus on this topic of resilience. And I thought I would just pull together one or two slides, actually, to help us as we focus this evening on resilience. And with Errol's help, we'll be able to see those. And the context for me is that we're in strange times, difficult times, as we experience what's happening with COVID-19. I also said last time that I was speaking on this session. I talked about something called VUCA, which many of you might recognize from the organizations that you work with and for. And that's about environments that are volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And we're certainly experiencing that at the moment. And my sense is that it's having an impact on individuals and families. So hopefully the focus on this topic this evening will be useful for all of us. Maybe just to set some context then in terms of the resilience context, what might be some things that that might be helpful. In the next slide, I've listed some scriptures that might be helpful for us to focus on. Here you can see they are: do not be frightened, do not be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. In Joshua, 2 Timothy tells us that God's given us a spirit of fear, has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, of love, and of a sound mind or self-control, depending on which version you read. One of my favorite scriptures, certainly from my time in Sunday school, is Proverbs 3, 5 and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not lean onto your own understanding. And I guess the relevance for that might be what we hear at 5 o'clock most days, certainly most weekdays. I think the weekends have come to an end now, but the government's update on what's happening with the pandemic and the fact that 8.4 million people have been furloughed. That scheme will expire, run out in October, and there are going to be some very difficult conversations that will take place about how many of the 8.4 million people will be able to go back to jobs. Perhaps you're in that category and just unsure about what that might mean for you. So maybe that particular scripture could be relevant. And of course, the scripture that most of us would be familiar with, John 3:16. In fact, I was looking the other day at books that have been sold, and it's incredible how the Bible has remained on the top, right at the top of the top selling list for many years, in fact outstripping the next bestseller, usually by 2 to 1. And normally the Bible is now taken out of the top selling book lists because no other book can compete, which is, I think, just incredible. So let's start to look a little further of this theme of resilience and maybe go to a definition of what resilience might be. It's being used more and more now. Perhaps you're hearing it in the environment that you are in. We used to only talk about it in terms of parenting children, maybe thinking about how one might recover from events that will be described as traumatic. But more and more now it's being used in certainly in the world of work. And it's about this ability or someone's capacity to be able to manage stress. And stress is always going to be with us. It's never going to go away. Still remain healthy. How we can adapt and learn from the challenges and setbacks that present themselves to us in life. And usually underpinned by three areas: the psychological aspects, physiological, and social. And on that third one, we've been impacted. The scripture in Psalms talks to us about not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together with other brethren. And I'm sure perhaps we're feeling the effects of not being able to have that weekly or bi-weekly fellowship with brethren at the moment, where we can hug each other and talk and share, break bread together to talk about what's happening in our lives. A couple of other things in terms of context setting. We know a lot about stress. Hans Sale is the Canadian endocrinologist who's helped us with that definition of stress. But stress is usually talked about in terms of being something difficult or that you shouldn't have. But that's actually not the case. If you think of a bell-shaped curve, stress would normally be placed at the middle of that, or at the top of that bell-shaped curve. And what that means is that in life, it's useful or best that we have something to do. So if you think of this bell-shaped curve, which would be like that, if I try and draw that on the screen, on the left-hand side, what that would represent is someone who has nothing to do. So maybe they are either off work or maybe out of work, and actually the impact of that can lead to boredom. If you take it right to the other side of the bell-shaped curve, so on the right-hand side at the bottom, that would represent someone who has too much to do, and that's what Hans Sale referred to as distress. And right at the top in the middle, which is where ideally it would be not too much and not too little, we would refer to that as eustress, as it were. So stress in itself isn't a bad thing. It's just about how we would handle stress. So resilience as a concept is quite complex. Resilience is a journey. It's a continual journey, not a destination. In the field of psychology, which is the field that I work in a lot, we refer to resilience being a state, not a trait. And that means that it's something you can do something about. You can put things into place to try and improve one's level of resilience. And in a moment, we're going to have a look at what some of the areas might be that make up this concept of resilience. So let me just pause there for a moment and see whether we can have a little interaction with those who have dialed in and are listening in tonight. If I were to ask you what some of the ways are that you currently respond to stress, or you respond to get through each week, it might be that you exercise, you have a support network. I wonder whether you could perhaps post some responses in about what it is that you currently do, and maybe you can help me, Errol. Just let me know whether there are any responses coming in. What do you currently do throughout the week to help you cope and survive and get through your week? And any responses coming through?
None has come through as yet. I'm still looking.
What
none has come
happens at the
through.
moment? Sorry?
And no comment hasn't come through as yet. I'm just waiting to see if any comes through.
Okay. Well, let's take a look while you're thinking about that, about what you might do. Let's take a look at some of these individual areas of resilience, because whilst resilience is talked about a lot, perhaps there's not a full and a broad understanding of what resilience really is. So let's have a look at those, the individual areas or components of resilience, if we can. So there are 7 that you can see here, and I'm going to take us through each of those quite quickly for us to spend some time on them. The first is living authentically, and this is about, in a nutshell or in summary, how we can be true and honest with ourselves. It's about whether we can find some link or something that's consistent about how we are able to know what our core values are and how we're able to live those core values. It's an alignment between the values and sometimes the work that it is that we do. And usually this area is underpinned by things such as honesty, trust, respect, kindness, and integrity. And sometimes you will know when there's not a link or a fit. So, for example, I remember speaking to a Christian doctor, a Christian GP, at the start of the year, and he'd been a GP for many years, and in the practice, his colleagues asked him to take on some additional areas of responsibility in managing different areas, and he started to do that. And surprisingly for him, he found that his levels of resilience started to dip. His stress levels started to rise. And what he recognized was that he wasn't being true to himself. He wanted to be a GP, he wanted to talk to patients, interact with patients. He didn't want to do anything else around management responsibilities. So just 6 months later, having experienced some sickness himself, decided that wasn't for him, and he decided to go back to just seeing patients. It was quite an experience for him. Number 2 is finding your calling, and that should be a term, I guess, that's familiar for many who are listening into the session this evening. Certainly in church or Christian terms, it's something that we think and talk about a lot. So for me, for example, I know that my own calling is in the area of working with men in men's ministry, and I've known that for 15 years or so. It would be very pointless asking me to head up or lead youth ministry, for example. It's not something that I would really be waking up in the morning thinking, what is it that I can do? But if you're in an area where you don't really have the fit, you don't have the calling, that will have an impact on your overall level of resilience. Perhaps you're a square peg in a round hole, and trying to find what it is that you should be doing, and then getting that fit into that area will help with your overall levels of resilience. This model also refers to something else about motivation. And what it says is, there's an academic term which I'm just going to use, forgive me for a moment, but that academic so linking it to this area of finding your calling, if you're outside of that area, you will never be fully fulfilled or fully happy. And it's one of the reasons why we see that some people are constantly searching to be fulfilled. And in fact, as I was thinking about this evening, I reflected on what we see in in John, the story about the woman at Samaria, John chapter 4, and in verse 15, it talks about her thirst and wanting to be sustained by the water that only Jesus can give. And I think that's a well-known story, but its meaning is deep around people who are constantly looking and searching for what it is that they should be doing and where they should be. And number 3 is maintaining your perspective. And this area is about how you can stay optimistic, how you can stay focused, how you can move on from setbacks, and how you can buffer the negative energy that often comes from others. I mean, you might not be familiar with this, but there can be sometimes contacts, colleagues, even there who something positive, they will bring something negative into the mix, and it becomes difficult. Remaining levels of resilience. So there's a often we have to make there, which is about whether we decide to stay or stay around and stay in that presence, in that company, or maybe move on and move away so that we're not distracted by some of the negative aspects that might be fielded towards us. Mastering stress is number 4, and mastering stress has a combination of areas. It has cognitive areas, and cognitive would be what happens when we're not able to focus on stress. So that would mean that we would have an inability to focus. Our concentration keeps wavering. Perhaps we're beset by constantly being negative, and we're not usually negative. Or maybe we find that we're having episodes of insomnia for a number of nights in the week. A second area that we might feel in terms of if we're really under stress is emotional areas. So we might feel as if we're being moody. Perhaps we're feeling anxious, teary, irritable. Our level of tolerance is not as high as it would normally be. All of those are warning signs that our levels of stress might be rising higher than it should be. And then there are also some physical areas where we might be having headaches, muscular aches and pains, maybe skin rashes, ulcers, and dizziness. If any of those things are being experienced, they could be signs for us to look out for. Number 5, interacting cooperatively is about the value we get from networks, colleagues, being with the brethren. You know, the strength of having good relationships. And in life, we go through experiences, and as you go through those experiences, it helps you identify who your great friends are. And when you have great friends and great relationships, it's a bit like a balm, really, being able to share your deep thoughts, and whether the sun is shining for you on your life or whether it's raining, it doesn't matter when you have those friends around you, because they are always there, and it's great to know that you can rely on them and count on them. Number 6 is staying healthy, and that's just good exercise, diet, and sleep in good measure, 7 or 8 hours a night. And then number 7 is building networks, which is about how you can develop and build relationships with people who would normally be outside of your usual sphere. So for those who are on the call who are part of a church network, you might be part of the Church of God of Prophecy, but you also have relationships and networks and with people who are in the New Testament Church of God, Bethel, for example. So you're expanding your network quite broadly and quite widely. So if you were to do a report on that, I've got an example actually that I can show you. Because I said earlier that resilience is a trait, is a state rather, not a trait. And what that means, that it's a state, is that it can be measured, it can be tracked, and you can do something about it. So you're looking at an example report here. It happens to be mine, from me completing a questionnaire just under a year ago, I think. And you can see how the ratings are for me. And as soon as I saw this, I knew exactly why. I was high on some areas, and there's a second page to this as well that we can show. I knew why I was high on areas, some areas, and lower on other areas. So if you look at number 6, for example, staying healthy, you can see for me it measured as being very high. And I'll tell you exactly why that was. About 18 months ago, I went to the doctor. I was coming up to my 50th birthday, and I had a letter through the post saying that I needed to go for a health check. So that's what I did. And then I was called back 2 or 3 weeks after for the results of that health check. And overall, it was fine. However, I remember the nurse's look as she paused before she then broke something to me, which was that my blood test registered that I was 1 point away from being diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. My father died in 2006. He died of renal failure, and I saw how he had to cope with being diabetic for a good number of years. In fact, I remember when I was at home with my parents, he had just been diagnosed, and in 24 hours, my mother cut all sugar out. The house went from being full of sugar in a number of ways to no sugar around. Even in my tea or coffee, I had to go from 2 sugars to none, and it wasn't my choice. Anyway, when I had that news, it was the kick and the focus that I needed to change my lifestyle. And I started to exercise, I started to go to the gym, started to eat even more healthily, and that's helped me to be able to get at my own level of health and fitness, and pretty much have been able to maintain that. Let's take a very quick look at team resilience. I can see the clock is ticking away there. I just want to touch briefly on team resilience. And the reason I want to do this is because it's possible for someone to focus heavily on your own level of resilience, but to be in a team or surrounded by people where resilience isn't high. As a team, resilience isn't high, and that can mean it can have a negative impact on you. So you can see the description here of team resilience, the capacity of a group of people to think about how they manage the everyday pressure of work and remain healthy, think about adapting to challenges and changes. And in the discussions that I'm hearing, this has had an impact for most people right now, because most of us are working from home. We're having meetings on Zoom or Microsoft Teams or some other kind of format. We're not going into the office and engaging with our colleagues as we might normally do. Someone described this current experience as the best leadership development program that could have ever been invented. We're all learning, but we've never been here before. And you can see on the next slide what some of the breakdown here is for team resilience, which I won't go through. I won't go through in as much detail as I did on individual resilience, but you can see the list here from robust, being resourceful, having a sense of being able to persevere. Self-care is whether there is the appropriate conversations that happen in the team, just to check in with colleagues, or maybe is that happening for you at the moment? Is the phone ringing with someone just checking up to see how you're doing? an email coming in asking just how you're doing, or perhaps are you doing that for others, just checking in to see how colleagues might be, or even how family or friends might be. Capability, number 5. Connected is number 6. You know, there's a number of models about what should be happening in the world of work, and one of them suggests that being connected or feeling part of a group is crucial. One of 3 areas that's crucial. Also having a sense, you can learning need. Also, there's a sense of autonomy and control. But if you don't feel that you are connected to a group, that it can mean that your resilience level will drop. And I don't have an example here for you in terms of what the questionnaire would look like for a team, but it's possible if you have a team of 10, then 6 that they feel very connected to a team, to their team, but there might be 3 or 4 that for their own reasons feel less connected. We've heard much this week in the news about issues around race, for example, and I recognise that there may be issues for some who are on the call that might feel that that's an area in which they are not able to feel connected and not able to be themselves and express themselves as they would like to. And then team alignment is the 7th. Whether the team gets a sense that everyone is working towards the same goal, or whether colleagues are working for different purposes, different causes, and going in a different direction. And this isn't just about the organizational workplace you might be in. The same is true of church environments. If there's no sense of alignment or working together, it's going to have an impact on the ultimate aim of trying to increase the numbers that might be joining a church. So that's what it looks like at a team level. And in the last few minutes before I pass back to Errol, there's just a couple of questions I wanted to put to you, and I wonder whether you would consider. And again, I'm going to ask whether perhaps you would post what your responses would be to these questions. So I've taken you through the model, both on individual and team, spent much more time on individual. Of those 7 areas, were there any that resonated for you? I gave you a personal example in relation for me and my own health and well-being, for example. But what would you say, in which areas are your own levels of resilience dipping? Where have they been dipping? And here's a reminder of what these 7 areas are. And then there's a second question for us to think about and consider, which is whether you can think of any practical things that you might be able to start doing to improve your resilience. And I think what's really interesting about this area is that towards the start I mentioned that it's psychological, the way we think, our cognitive ability. It's social, getting together with friends and family, and it's also the physical, our own health and well-being. It's an incredibly powerful and all-rounded area. So have a think, and let's have some of your responses so that we can have a conversation about it. In which areas are your own levels of resilience dipping, or have they been dipping? And secondly, can you think of any practical things you might be able to start to do to improve your own resilience? Okay, thank you, Errol.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brother Clive. Here I am, everybody. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us, YouTube, Facebook. There are a few comments, but just before I go over to some of the comments. I just wanted everyone to know this is Brother Clive Lewis, as he mentioned earlier, has been working with me for over 10 years in the men's ministry. In fact, he was the one that first started our men's summit. And I think we started, Clive, the first one was way over 200 men, I think it was, and the very first one. And the average then averaged out to maybe 150 or so. And I want to say thanks to Clive for that. Clive Lewis is OBE and DL. I think everyone knows what OBE is, I think. What is the OBE and the DL, Clive, first of all? So everyone could know what OBE is. What does it stand for? And DL?
OBE is officer of the British Empire, and I was awarded that in 2011 for public service. It was for two things primarily. The first was following the untimely death of Stephen Lawrence. I was invited by the government to think through what could be done to better help young black males achieve their potential. So I worked with Doreen Lawrence and others to work that through. Secondly, I work in is dispute resolution. He was one of the first in the country to train as a mediator and primarily for workplace in the UK, some other countries such as Jordan, Algeria. They also did one or two things at the European Parliament just to help with the thinking in this area. So that's what that was for. And then the second thing you mentioned is DL, that stands for Deputy Lieutenant. There are 100 counties in the country, and each is represented by a Lord Lieutenant. And the Lord Lieutenant is the representative for Her Majesty, and would ask for a small number of people to support him or her in their work. And that's an area that I serve in.
Excellent, excellent, wonderful. Thank you. I haven't got my OB yet or my DL, so maybe I'll get that soon. I smile at that because that is true. I might get mine soon. Anyway, Clive is also author of many books. I've asked you this before, Clive, and I know you've written many books. Tell us how many books you've written, and did you write anything on resilience? I know you run your own business as well. I know you run your own business and you do courses in this. I just want people to know that Clive is very well researched. He's written, runs his own business, very successful business, because I've actually been employed by Clive to do some work for him over the years, in fact. So I want to say thanks for that as well. So let's go ahead and tell us how many books you've written. And you do a lot of training courses in these areas, don't you?
Yes, so I've written 17 books now.
17? And, is that 17?
Yes.
Excellent.
Across a range of areas on topics that affect people in the workplace. So how you bounce back from redundancy. There is a book on health, which is linked to resilience, actually. It's about how you can build your well-being and manage your... also a book on difficult conversations, a few books on conflict management and mediation. So there's a range.
Excellent, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you very much for that. I just wanted everyone to know. I didn't do that at the beginning because I was just waiting for more people to come on. There was a response to, I think, the first question that you asked. I think David says, I'm not sure if it was relating to what you had asked, but he says, eat more, pray more, sing more. I don't know if you want to respond to that. He said, eat more, pray more,
well,
and sing more. David is a musician, by the way.
Right. Well, praying more, you can never do too much praying. Singing, also great for resilience. Eating more, it depends on what you're eating. If you're eating healthy, then of course that's great. But if it's crisps, chocolate, snacks,
yes,
unlikely to be good for the physical side.
Yes. Yes. So the eat more, pray more. Not unless David is talking about eating more fruits, right?
Yeah, that's great. Eating more fruit.
Yes, visiting more fruits. Welcome, Pastor Michael Sewell and Jenny, Julie Mackenzie. Welcome to you guys. Elaine, welcome. Pat, welcome, and Lucas. Clive, thank you for joining us. Just looking at Facebook to see if there are any more comment. Michael Sewell says, I was just trying to find. He says, I'm gonna read it. He says, answer alignment of the team. Online meetings are helpful, but still limited. What would be your comment to that? Online meetings are helpful, but still limited.
Yes. Well, alignment is about being able to note progress, uh,
Mm-hmm.
be, being able to talk about what's been done before, or rather what's been done rather than what hasn't been done. Being able
Yes,
to talk about
yes.
is and highlight success. And we've all learned in the last 3 months or so
Mm-hmm.
about how it's possible to do things that we considered impossible, such as what we're doing now, doing so much on technology. Even the largest organizations in the public sector for whom you would say change would be considered an oxymoron. They've been able
Mm.
to implement change in 24, 48 hours in some cases. Um, but it is actually very difficult to replicate the power of face-to-face meetings, human interaction, being in the same space. This format only goes so far. Ideally, what you'd
Mm-hmm.
have, and hopefully, and not too long from now, we're going to be able to get back into workplaces in some context. But I think the reality is um, it's going to be like this for a while, and
Yeah,
we're not going to how life was before.
good. I'm going to introduce you. I'm sure you probably know Winston Lindsay, but before you answer his question, Winston is writing a book at the moment, and every time he comes on, I ask him about it. So, what one tip would you've written 17, I've written 5. So, I think your advice is probably much more stronger than mine. What advice, one, two, or three actually, what advice would you give Winston Lindsay? Is writing, I think it's his first book. So, what advice would you give him at this time? One, two, or three is entirely up to you.
Advice would be to stick at it. Um, I would say often the hardest part of writing a book is the first paragraph or perhaps the first page. Um, if you can do that, then that's the most important thing because you've made a start. So keep going. Secondly, I would say stay focused. It's very easy to get distracted by the TV, by tittle tattle, by things that really aren't adding any value. And to
Mm,
stay focused is because it might mean that you have to take yourself away somewhere. I mean, the way that I've written the bulk of my books actually is while I've been traveling, not doing now, and using any time that would normally be downtime. If I have been in a hotel room, or if I've been on the train or on a plane journey, I would use that time to write. So any time that you would consider
mm,
downtime, um, if that's in 1 hour blocks, it's an opportunity to write. Just one more thing I would say, Errol, for Winston, from a practical point of view, is have a pad and pen with you
mm,
all the time. I found
mm.
that as a writer of books, I would hear things. I'd be listening to the radio and think, do you know, I've never actually heard that word before. What does it mean? And I'd be able to write it down and then go in and research it. Or there might
Mm,
be a theme that I had listened to and think, actually, I can make something of that. And with the notepad and pen, I could write it down and then focus on
mm.
it straight. But if I
Excellent.
if I can write a book, and anyone can write a book.
Well, That was my line. That was my line. I don't think that's your. Yeah, I wanna ask before you answer Winston's question. I put it on the screen. Is Winston? I want you to do me a favor. I want you to write in the chat room the single advice that I gave you. I want to see if you remember it. I gave you one advice, and Clive spoke about it in different ways. But I want you to write in the chat room in YouTube the advice I gave you. So I'm going to look out to see if you can remember. If you can't, I'll just remind you. But I'll be very upset if you can't remember mine. But anyway, thank you for that, Clive. That was powerful. That was powerful. And I think that's for everyone out there that's right in the book. Clive has given you 3 or 4 tips that, you know, beautiful. Okay, right. Winston asked. Well, he didn't ask. He didn't ask a question. He just made a statement. He says, "Greeting, Pastor Errol and Brother Clive. When I'm stressed, I get very anxious. So my way of coping is going for a walk with my headphones on while listening to relaxation music or motivational speeches." What's your thought on that?
Yeah, spot on. And I'm quite sure that the research would support it about how stress and anxiety do come down as a result of exercise. So I totally support it. I do a number of things to keep fit. I do kickboxing 3 times a week. I walk every week over 3 days. Every other day I walk and run 8 miles. And I find that if I miss a session, I get quite tense and a little anxious myself. And certainly exercise is a very good way of keeping stress levels or levels of anxiety down. Somehow, you know, the brain relaxes when you're doing exercise. You start thinking about a whole range of things will come to your mind that wouldn't usually. And I find it's a great way. I'd support it.
Excellent, 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 excellent. Now that's powerful. No, Winston. No, I didn't say write a page a day. That's not what I said. But a page a day is still good advice, by the way. But it wasn't a page a day. I said what I said normally when people come to me, Brother Clive, for advice and writing a book. I mean, all of what you said is totally correct and so on. So I said I only have one advice to give people, and the advice is you must write a minimum of 1 line per day. That's my advice. A minimum of 1 line per day. So if you wrote 500 lines yesterday, you must still write 1 line today. Because what I discovered was when I left the book for a day or 2, when I came back, I couldn't remember where I was, and I had to read the whole thing again and get my thoughts back together again. And I find I was restarting all the time. So I decided that set a policy, a minimum of 1 line per day. That means I will always look at the book. And if I write 1 line a day, if I take any of your books, like Clive, let's say you have a 200-page book, and each page is around 14 lines. Eventually, if you're married, do your arithmetic, and you do 1 line per day, you will finish the book sometime. You know, that was my thing. So it wasn't 1 page a day. I said, Winston, it was 1 line per day. But anyway, 1 page is still good. 1 page per day is probably a lot of work as well. Yeah. Now, you spoke about resilience as being a journey. And I like that, because I guess what you're talking about is being able to, let me go back to your definition. I think that truly was powerful. So let me take this off and put up back the definition. And we see an individual's capacity to manage everyday stress. So it's an everyday thing, really. Remain healthy, adapt and learn from expected setbacks, and prepare for future challenges proactively. So really what you're saying is, and I like the term you use as well, it's a state, not a trait. Could you explain the difference between those two again? I know you talked about a state can be measured, but What's the difference between the two?
Yes, it means that it can be, you can do something about it. A trait
Mm,
is, in psychological terms, a trait is fixed. So you might
fixed. Okay.
refer to your
Okay.
as a trait, for example, but a state means that, for the report that I showed, for example, that's a snapshot of my levels of resilience at a point in time.
Mm-hmm.
When
Mm-hmm.
I then can look at the results and think, what is it that I can do to adjust an area, so to
Mm-hmm.
become, in perspective. For example, maybe I just need to have a more positive mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I need to think about the company that I'm keeping and spend less time with people who might be negative, for example, on
Mm-hmm.
mastering stress. A few areas around eating and sleeping and keeping fit. Um, and so, there are things that you can do about when you see these indicators here. So that's what a state means. You can do something about it.
Right. But yes, but the trait is really more or less it's
The trait is
fixed.
fixed.
It can't be
Yes.
moved. And what you're saying really is that maybe next year when you do this test, it might show even a worse situation, or it might even show a more progressive or better
Mm.
position, isn't
Yeah.
it? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think the message out there for people who are probably not coping so well with stress. You mentioned as well. Did you mention? Was it Hans Selye that you mentioned? Was it him that you mentioned earlier?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Right. Yes. Because I think it was he
He
that
is.
made us. Yes. He
No,
was the
no,
one that
please
made. Sorry.
go ahead.
Yeah, I think he was the one that made mention that anyone without stress is a dead person. Anyone without stress is dead. And I think what he was talking about there is good stress and chronic stress, and so on. So yes, I remember him quite clearly. But yes, I like the point that it's a progression. It's not a trait, but it's a state. We can get better
Yeah.
through some of the things that you mentioned about being robust, resourceful, and so on. But I think one of the point you made mention um, teams, you mentioned about team resilience. Um, I, are you talking about working together as a team? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, working together as a team and recognizing that if there's a team of 10, uh, then people might be at different levels on the scale. So, six people in the team might think, yeah, this is great, there are no problems. But actually, there are three or four that are feeling left out, they're feeling isolated for a whole range of reasons. And I mentioned that this week has been poignant in terms of what we've been seeing in relation to Floyd and how that has crossed the water, and we've seen um, the backlash. I describe it as
Mm,
my favorite author. If you take the Bible out of the picture for a moment, but my favorite author is Malcolm Gladwell. And one of the books that he wrote, I think he's written 6 books. One of those books is called The Tipping Point. And
mm,
what it refers to is there's a moment in time where something will happen, either for negative or for good, but you don't get to something happening in isolation. So what we're seeing at the moment is the result of a number of years of significant events where there has been no action taken. So we've reached that tipping point to people, and people are saying enough is enough, no
mm,
more. And there are issues and challenges from a race point of view where people who are in a team may be feeling some sense of isolation
mm,
because egalitarianism is about recognizing people based on merit, on their
mm,
performance, and people don't feel as if that is actually happening. So you can use these types of tools to get a sense of whether people are feeling included or not.
mm, mm. Powerful, powerful, powerful. I want to say welcome to Jennifer Robinson. Welcome. She said she found us by accident. No, it wasn't an accident. You were set up, Jennifer. Welcome. Glad to have you, and thank you so much for joining us. Stanley Golden, welcome, sir. Christine Faulkner, how you doing? Sorry, Christine, I haven't been able to take your call as yet. I tell you, I've got death in the family, and I don't even know how I'm doing this show tonight. What my niece has passed away, so I have to deal with that. It's just sad for me. Gloria, welcome. Annette, welcome. Everybody, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. I just wanted to ask you this question, Clive. I want to go back to the individual components, and I made my notes, and I've got my notes right here. I made my notes, so I like what you say actually about always walk with a notepad and pen, and that's something that I've been doing now for nearly since 1981. So where are we now? 2000. That's around nearly 40 years, isn't it? Wow. Where are we now? 2020, yes, nearly 40 years. Right. I wanted to ask you this question about that. If you were to choose one of these, let's say I forced you to choose one that I don't know if there's a one that's more important than the other. I don't think so, maybe. But which one would you put as a priority for everyone on this? I've got one in my mind, but I don't know whether or not I'm right. But which one would you say out of these seven? You've mentioned living authentically, finding your calling. I hope that's what. Yes, yes. Number three, maintain perspective. Number four, mastering stress. Interactive, um, interacting cooperatively, staying healthy, building network. Maybe I'm asking a silly question. I don't know. I know you've taught on this and children as well as adults, because I've been on some of the children ones. So, what would you say number one out of those? Maybe there's no priority. I don't know.
Yes, of course, they're all important. I think
Yes.
the it would be S2, finding your calling.
Right.
I think that a man or woman who is um, living without knowing what their calling is or without being in their calling is simply existing.
Right.
And
Right.
my experience is that around 15 years ago or so, I feel as if I found my calling, and it was based on two things. Men's ministry was one, and
Mm.
also my day job is another. You
Mm.
know, I have a vocation. I don't have a job. I help people who are in conflict,
Mm.
and it's
Mm.
to live out my calling. So for me, finding your calling is the main one. I often refer to this in terms of its underpinning that in psychology, we refer to three people from what's called the Viennese school of psychology.
Mm.
Most people would recognize these names. Freud is one, and Freud's research talked about people wanting a sense of pleasure from their
Mm.
activities. Um, Alfred Adler talked about most people are driven by power as opposed to being driven by pleasure, and they get that
Mm.
sense of satisfaction from being in powerful positions and being able to, wield their power. But the person who's known least, but has the most powerful methodology, I think, is someone called Viktor Frankl. Viktor
Mm.
Frankl has written called Man's Search for Meaning. He was a Jewish man caught up in the Holocaust, imprisoned, and meaning is about what he believes is our motivation and purpose. If someone has a sense of meaning, they are much more likely to be higher on this
Mm. Mm.
scale of resilience. It's what's driving them is a sense of meaning. And earlier on, I talked about this concept of hedonic treadmill. We all have this fixed level of happiness, And what it the hedonic treadmill means is if you have a significant experience on either side of the scale, so it could be that you win the lottery and you win millions of pounds, or it could be that you experience the death of a loved one on the other end of the scale. Whichever one it is, over time, as you get used to having a higher level of wealth, or as you come to terms with the person that you've lost, you'll then resettle to a fixed level of happiness. That's what's referred to as the hedonic treadmill. And those people who have a sense of purpose and are working towards some meaning are likely to find more satisfaction than those that aren't. We need meaning and purpose in our lives to, to survive it, essentially. Yeah, I feel very, very strongly about the importance of that. Jeremiah 29 says that there is a plan for us, a plan for each of us in all of our, but then he gives us is to find out what that is. And we can ask, but what is it that we're supposed to be doing? Where are we supposed to be applying our energies every day?
I want to get to Dennis's question on Facebook because but I just have to say this before we do that, because you're absolutely so spot on for me personally, because I can't remember when it was, what year it was, when I sat down and wrote all my goals. That's before 1998 at least. It would have been around 1980 something. And I sat down and I wrote down all my goals in 8 specific areas. And when I finished writing it, Clive, I was in a very bad state before that. But when I finished writing my goals, I felt as though I was halfway there to achieving it. That's how impactful it was in my life. And there is a proverbial statement in Proverbs 29:18 that says, where there is no vision, where there is no open revelation, where there is no purpose, people perish. And I think that's exactly what you are saying. It's finding your purpose in life, finding your calling. And I went into a prison once. It was Felton Prison. I went to do some work, and I saw an inscription on the wall which says, when I do what God called me to do, I can feel his presence. When I walk in my calling, so to speak, I can feel his presence. So I resonate with that, and I'd love to come back to that. But let me go on to Dennis. Brother Dennis Grandison, welcome to you, sir, over in Facebook. Thank you for joining us. Wish you and your family all the best. And he says, hi, Clive. What would you suggest as a help or helps in maintaining perspective, which is number 3?
I would say thinking about the bigger picture. So whatever that might be for you. So if you, maybe before you get to number 3, we go back to number 2. If you have that calling and you have that purpose, your reason for living and existing, it's far easier to be able to maintain perspective. There's a phrase that as children growing up, water off a duck's back. If you're living in S2, finding your calling, very little will trouble you. Some you might see get really upset over the smallest of things, and when I see that, I think, maybe there's an issue there about someone not feeling a sense of fulfillment. Someone who is working and living in their calling, it's very difficult to upset them, I think, because they are aware that there's a bigger picture for them.
Yeah, no, that is a great point. I like what you made mention about the if you know your purpose, you know what you are called to do, you're not going to be sidetracked that easily, and you're going to stay focused, and that's a powerful answer. Thank you for that question, Brother Dennis. Yeah, I really do love the point you made about finding your calling. It truly is. I wanted to ask you this question. In the diagram we still got up there that we're showing, you got R at W. is there a meaning behind that R at W sustain?
It
Is
just
that
means resilience at work.
sorry?
It just means
Oh,
resilience.
resilience at work. Okay, I never saw
Yeah,
that before. Yeah, I'm
yes,
learning.
yeah.
I'm learning. That's why I'm here.
Just back on maintaining perspective. I mentioned earlier that um, sometimes in life when you're on a journey, you realize that perhaps there are individuals in your circle that might not be helping or contributing towards you, and you are trying to go, and that
Mm,
might make some tough decisions there about who you remain connected with, and that might be another thing for Dennis to think about in terms of maintaining perspective, because what the model says and the tool says um, is that in order to be able to maintain perspective, you have to be able to keep focused when you have negative
mm,
things on around you. So that might mean you walk away from some, or perhaps you take some contacts out of your phone book and think, actually, I need to connect with some more positive people.
mm, mm. And it's going back to that networking that you mentioned, building networks, and I think that obviously when you've got some good people around you, it really does help. But sometimes what I find though, Clive, in dealing with resilience, the pressure, and so on, sometimes as men, this is a men's session to to a large extent, it's a men's night. A lot of men tend to maybe not have that network, but they tend to hide away. We tend to find, whereas women are more open, they speak, of they verbalize their situation. Us men, we tend to internalize that, and it creates a problem. So you're talking about building network, but do you find that men build network, or do you find the reverse? What's your experience in that?
Yes, I mean, women are incredible on this, just incredible.
Mm,
How women network, how they have each other's backs, how they look after
mm,
each other. I'm amazed by what I see. But you're right;
mm,
it's very different for men. We're made in a different way. It's as if it takes a man much longer to really suss out: can I trust this person?
mm,
Or is actually, to be honest, about why it's so different for
mm,
men, and we see the consequences of that. I do know that there's lots and lots of research that talks about the benefits of talking, and how you will feel less stressed if you do talk things through, because men won't do, results in disastrous consequences with them taking their lives, or doing something else that's quite significant. But
mm.
if there was anything from women, it would be that the power of networking and talking.
Yeah, and the other thing what might be interesting along this subject is what I've discovered is men find it easier to speak. I don't know if you find this in your experience. Men find it easier to talk to women that are not their spouse than they are to talking to their spouse or to other men. I don't know if you found that to be the case.
Oh gosh, I don't know. That's not something I'd thought about before. Actually,
Hmm.
maybe that. Uh, I don't really know about whether that's
Hmm.
something you find easier or not.
Okay. Um. Okay. David said, but is not the way that we talk to each other. Okay, David, I'm not sure what you mean by that. Um, Dennis, welcome, Pastor Paulina. Welcome. How you doing, Paul, as well? Dennis says, I have done this and continuing to do so, coupled with building my network, which is a great help. So thanks for responding back to that, Dennis. I don't think there are any. Thank you guys for the condolences. Appreciate that. Oh, my heart. Thank you so much, guys. Love you guys lots. Um, okay, Clive, we're coming near into the end. I'm gonna give you the last 5 minutes to you. I don't know if there's any key things that you'd like to say to the audience, any maybe three key points that you may want to make. At this time, we're talking about resilience, a powerful presentation that you made, by the way. Thanks for the slides as well. And I don't know if there's any last comments you'd like to make to our audience before we release you. Can you hear me, Clive?
Oh yes, I think I might have frozen out. Were you asking if there were
No, I was
any
just saying,
final?
I'm just going to give you the last 5 minutes if you wanted to leave any last closing thoughts with the audience, maybe three key points, or one or two key things, maybe takeaways for them. I know you've made a
Yeah.
very powerful presentation, but maybe any summarization
Well,
that you'd like to make.
yes. Well, I think the main uh, point or points would be, as with any session like this, there will be some areas that resonated and some that didn't. And I think my advice would be to immediately make a note of those areas that did resonate, take a note, and then start to think about what you might start to do to improve resilience in that particular area. You know, I've given some of my own personal examples, particularly around health and fitness, for example. And I've also said a couple of things about how one might maintain a sense of perspective, and some quite difficult things there I mentioned around choices. I think it's very important you're, who we are connected to, and who we're being very close, who we're being very close to. I was thinking today of a conversation I had a number of years ago. It was one of those life-changing conversations, and it was with a fellow brother, and it's going back maybe 6 years or so now, and we were actually working together, and it was in the coffee break where we were speaking, and we got onto the subject of education, and we were talking about the field of psychology. And at that stage, I didn't have a master's in psychology, and he was just encouraging me to think about going to get a master's. I think that conversation took place in the April. By the September, I had registered and I had started my master's course, and that was 2 years to attain my second master's degree. And as I look back on what's happened since then, so that was completed 4 or 5 years ago, it's set me on a trajectory or on a path to experiencing some things that I would never have imagined. And I've said to him on a few occasions how grateful I am. And what I take away from that is that, you know, there are certain people who will really be able to help you. It's one of those. It's just one of those conversations that was a really deep, at a really deep level, and was very helpful. And now, you know, a number of years on, I'm looking back and so grateful for taking that advice. And I would love to stay connected with more acquaintances and friends like that, to have those life-changing conversations. So maybe that's my message, or departing message, is to think about your own network, and how you're being helped by those who are around you, and be selective in working with those who are around you that can help.
Thank you so much, Brother Clive. Really do sincerely appreciate your time tonight. I am eternally grateful to Brother Clive for taking time out to be with us tonight. And as most of you may know, Brother Clive works with me, and in the National Men's Ministry Department of the Church of God of Prophecy for the last, I don't know, is it 10 years, 12 years? We've been working together. And I would say he's one of the nicest guys to work with. I don't think we've ever had an argument or a disagreement. whatever I agree with, he agrees with. Whatever he agrees with, I agree with. And we've worked together perfectly over the last many years. And that's many years ago, probably around 12. We've put on maybe around 10 national men's summit. He led around 6 or 7 or 8 of them. I did the rest. And the pressure on us was truly immense. Clive will tell you the pressure in running men's summit is truly amazing, and I won't begin to tell you about the pressure on that, but just want to just summarize and close and go from there, and just again say thanks to Clive for a truly amazing presentation, amazing answer. Again, I want to remind you, Clive Lewis, if you want his details, then contact me. But Clive Lewis is an OBE. Uh, this is my wife looking after me again. Can you believe that? And but anyway, she's an amazing wife. Anyway, but Clive is an OBE, and he explained that he's also DL, and he works very hard in the community. Runs his own business. Is a very successful businessman. He has employed me. Actually, I've run training courses for Clive up and down the country, all over the place, in schools and in businesses, running different courses and so on for him. And he runs his own. He deals with mediation. So if you're looking for a mediation expert, I don't know anyone better than Clive personally. He's well trained. He does a lot of work with the Church of God of Prophecy as well at the senior level in terms of our senior pastors retreat. So he's very well up there in that. And remember I said I wrote 5 books, right? He's written 17. And what I am amazed about with Clive, I remember when he told me, I was shocked. I'm still shocked about it. He said he decided to sell his car in order to take the time in traveling to write his books. Now that's a clue for somebody here tonight. He sold his car in order to travel, so the time he takes traveling, he will write his book. And he has written 17. And they're way up there in the market. They've been using companies. I've used a few of them in courses, used as handouts to the organization. So Clive is one of the most powerful black businessmen in this country, and so I'm honored to have him on the show tonight. So the session that you are having today with Clive would cost you a lot of money. Now let me explain this. He runs courses for companies that may last. They're called small bite courses or sushi courses or whatever, and some of them only last 2 hours. Like this one that you had here today. Do you know how much you'd have paid for that in the companies? Well, a minimum of around £250, and that's cheap. Cheap. Anyway, so he has given us some really powerful tips. And, resilience is given us a useful context in terms of scripture that you can see on the board. And do you know what? He didn't use verse 8, but verse 8 is my favorite verse in the entire Bible. Joshua 1 verse 8. So verse 7 and 9 is right sandwiched, sandwiched in between verse 8, or verse 8 is sandwiched in between those two. And that's my favorite verse in the Bible, Joshua 1 verse 8. This is God speaking to Joshua when he said, "This book of the law shall not depart of your mouth, but you must meditate therein day and night." The most powerful verse in the Bible for me, that is. Now, I'm not saying it is the most powerful verse in the Bible. I'm saying it is the most powerful verse in the Bible for me. That's the point I'm making. Okay, no problem. All right, no problem. And Brother Clive made mention, and I love the definition that he gives. Is just truly powerful. I gotta use it again. An individual's capacity to manage everyday stress of work, in your personal life, in the church life, wherever, and remain healthy, adapt and learn from unexpected setbacks, and prepare for future challenging challenges proactively. This is a powerful definition, so you want to make a note of that. I love the point that he makes about resilience, and he has sent me into a lot of schools actually to deliver training for kids and so on. Truly amazing. And one of the courses I run is resilience, and amazing, amazing. I mean, I love doing training with the kids. They are truly amazing. You know, one day I gotta tell you this. It's this is a commercial break, by the way. I was in one of the schools, right? I don't think I ever told Clive this. So I was delivering this training courses for this training course in resilience for children. We're talking about children who are 8, 9, 10 years of age. You know, that type of group. So anyway, this little kid, I finished running the course. Man, it was an exciting session. Those kids are amazing. A little child came up to me and he says, what did he call me? He said, sir. I think he called me sir. And he says, hey, can you do the floss? Something like floss or floss. I can't remember how you pronounce it. I said, I looked at him and I said, what is that? And then he started to do this dance thing. I nearly fell off the earth. I said, where did you get that from? And he said, sir, are you going to do it? And I had to say yes. So I said to them, let's all do it together. It was one of the most funniest moments of my life doing training with children when I had to do this plus with them. So every now and then when I'm downstairs with my wife and there's some music, I remember those kids and I start doing the floss. Anyway, that was a commercial break. Anyway, so it's a journey, but Clive said it's a journey. And he made the point about the difference between state and trait. It's a state, which means that it can be measured. And he gave the example as well of his own experience. And I bring that up again of, you know, he had measured his own and he has seen the report here. And it gives him, you know, in those 7 years, I believe, or something like that. And he's able to see exactly, you know, what state, those 7 states, and then he can make adjustments. So it's a state, not a trait, meaning that the trait is fixed. It's not fixed. So even though you're going through certain stresses, certain challenges, certain difficult circumstances, do know you can improve. And you can also get worse as well. You know, and one thing I've learned in life is that challenges either come to make you better or bitter. Did you get that? Trouble in life, challenges in life. Everyone have problems, right? The scripture that I quote the most, have I got my Bible up? No, my Bible is not open. And I'll get it open. And then I will show you this particular verse that I would love for you to see. And it is an amazing verse. Now, I think that my brethren, them in Wembley, the church, may be fed up with me because I quote this verse more than any other verse in the local church. And so let's go to my Bible. Let's get the book out. Right. Where is it now? Job chapter 14 and verse 1. Can you see that? Let's put it in yellow. Man that is born of a woman is of a few days. You only have a few days to live. But those few days are full of trouble. Isn't that something? So as you go through life, life is spelled Trouble, trouble. So you're going to go through trouble. The question is, how do you go through it? Are you resilient? Are you able to bounce back? Are you able to cope? Are you able to deal with it? Are you able to get better? Or are you getting bitter? You know, when I do this course with the children, I always bring elastic bands with me. And I give them all the elastic bands and I say stretch it. And they would stretch the elastic band. And then I would say, let it go. And then they would let it go and it come back together. It's your ability to bounce back. Yeah, you and me? Because we're going to be stretched in life. Trust me. In actual fact, if you keep on stretching that elastic band, and you keep stretching it, eventually it's going to snap, right? But are you able to bounce back? Are you resilient, in other words? And it's a very powerful example among the children because it gives them a classic example in the sense that you're going to be stretched in life. You're going to be stretched, or stressed. But are you able to bounce back? So I love that, and I love the point it makes out of the seven. And I think Clive's answer was truly profound. I think it was a powerful answer, one that I am excited about because it's a very, very powerful point. And the point is that I asked a question about which one would you really focus on, and Clive mentioned S2, S2, finding your calling. You know, that is so powerful. And I think that it's really worth considering what is your calling. And I always say to people that your calling is not necessarily just one thing. Sometimes we look at calling from a one-dimensional point of view, but you may have more than one calling. For example, I have a calling to be a father. That's one of my callings, one of my purpose in life, to be a father. I have been a father now for 40 years. Wow, that long. Yes. My oldest daughter was 40. When I was 60, she was 40, right? And my youngest daughter now, how old is she now? Princess. How old are you, Princess? I think she's 20, 20 something, 20, 21, 22. I was 23, somewhere along the line. Can't remember. I've been a father for so long. Another one of my calling is to be a husband. I'm a husband as well. I'm one of my calling, right? To be a husband. And I want to be a good husband because one of our, and I just bring that up in a moment, one of our, focus in terms of men's ministry, and Clive was the one that set this for us when we first started going, is having the purpose for the men's ministry department, which is developing better men, better fathers, better husbands, better leaders. And we added a next one to that, and better lovers. And so we have in this conference next week, which is, and you're all invited, by the way. And you can see here, developing better men, husbands, fathers, leaders, and lovers. And that's our focus within the National Men's Ministry Department. And so we see men as people who have purpose. And you may have, your spiritual purpose, whether it be teaching or preaching. What is your purpose? What is your calling? What is it that you see? Don't just look at one thing, because sometimes we get one-dimensional. But there are many areas. I see myself as a father. I'm a husband. I'm also a leader, and I've always been a leader since 1981 in particular. I've been leading people, and I've never found myself, not even 1 year since 1981, out of leadership position. And I've been in major leadership position. Even now, I'm a senior pastor, regional overseer, and so on. I run my own business as well, even though I'm not able to do as much work in it as I would like, because I'm, full-time in the past, and I've got to be true to that position. So, what is your purpose? Knowing your purpose, identifying your purpose. And the scripture makes it quite clear. Let me go to two scriptures based upon that before we close. Let me just bring up the Bible for us so that we can see exactly what I'm showing you. Now, I want to go to Proverbs 29, and I'm going to go to two scriptures, Proverbs 29 and verse 18. I mentioned that when Clive was speaking, and he says here, where there is no vision, where there's no purpose, where there's no open revelation, the people suffer, the people perish. And then it says something remarkably powerful. But he that keepeth the law, happy is he. And every time I ask the question to people, what is keeping the law mean? He that keepeth the law happy is he. And everyone would say to me, well, keeping the law is to do it, keeping the law of God. Well, you're absolutely correct. But I think there's something more specific and something that could be missed as to what I believe the Holy Spirit is trying to point out. And I remember being in a course, and of course, I'm not sure if it was Clive who sent me to that company, and I was among managers, and I put them into group and asked them this question: what does that mean to you? But he that keepeth the law, happy is he. And people always come back with the same thing, keeping the law of God and the law of the country and all of these things, and you'll be happy. And I say, yeah, you're absolutely correct. Let me put something to you. I want you to notice at the end of the word perish, there is a colon. There's a colon there. I want you to notice that. I'm told in English, whenever you have a colon, you know that a colon could mean that you have a list of things that you are adding to that. You can say, well, I went to the shop and bought the following: apple, banana, tangerine, salt, flour. So you would put a colon before that list. So it represents the list. But also, it also suggests as well, when you use a colon, that what's coming after is an amplification of what went before. In other words, what went after, he that keepeth the law, is associated with where there is no vision, the people perish. They're linked. The point is this. The first bit says, where there is no vision, the people perish. Just like you have the law of gravity. All right? Let me see now. You have the law of gravity, so I've got this remote control. The law of gravity state, every time I let this go, it's going to fall to the ground. That's the law of gravity. Are you with me? The law of gravity states, every time I let this remote control go, it's going to fall to the ground. The law of the vision is, if you don't have one, you'll perish. It's a law. If you don't know your purpose, you will suffer. It's a law. Where there is no law, people perish. It's a law. So where there is no vision, the people perish. It's a law. It's not a suggestion. It's not, it might happen or it could happen. It will happen. It's a law. That's the point I'm trying to make. Now, I mentioned I was going to show you two scriptures. Let me show you the other one. It's a prophet, in fact. And it's a prophet. Habakkuk is a prophet. Habakkuk chapter 2. And I want to look at verse 2 and 3 very quickly. And this is something that I found to be powerful. The Lord answered me and said, now, I want you to know who is speaking here. It's not the prophet speaking. The prophet is speaking about what the Yahweh said. And I want you to notice, and the Lord, Yahweh, that's where you get the term Yahweh or Jehovah from. And Yahweh said, notice the first thing, write the vision. I want you to notice this. I have never been to a company and done training for that company that didn't have a written vision of what they were in business to achieve. The only people that don't write their vision is us. I am told that only 3% of the population write their vision, and the wealth of the nation is in the hands of the 3%. And the 97% that doesn't write their vision work for the 3%. Then it says, make it plain on tablets, that he may run that readeth it. For the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it shall speak and not lie. Though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come. It will not tarry. I don't have time to go through all the rest, because there is a powerful message behind every one of those particular phrases, and I don't think it's time to go through that, as I'm going to close off in a moment. But I love the point. Finding your calling, finding your purpose, knowing what your vision is one of the most powerful thing that you can do going forward. As I said in closing, and I mentioned it while Clive was here, that I was messed up. I really was. I was confused. I spent so many years in prison between the age of 15 to 21. I spent most of those years in prison. I was one of those black kids that was finding myself every day. You know what a judge said to me? A judge says to me, Errol Williams, I see you more often than I see my own son. And he said to me this. He said, if I see you one more time, I'm going to sentence you. And lo and behold, I was back in court the following week. And he definitely sentenced me. I was 15. And he sentenced me, and I went into approved school, and all kind of stuff happened to me. And when I came out of prison, I was totally confused. I couldn't read and write properly. I didn't have much education. And I was really confused and lost. I don't know, I can't remember who I was listening to, whether it was Miles Monroe or Anthony Robbins or somebody else, whether it was Bishop Mike Wilson or Len Holmes, people who were training me at that time. Can't remember how it went. But what happened was, someone told me I need to find my purpose. I need to write my goals down. So I spent around 12 hours one day, writing all of my goals down. The things that I wanted to achieve in life, what I felt was my purpose. And I sat there, and after I prayed and I wrote them down, I had 8 areas that I was focusing on. I'll give you those 8 areas. It was health, personal development, community work, my career, my social life, my spiritual life, my family, and my finances. 8 areas. And I wrote my goals down in all of this. It came up to over 100 and something, by the way. But this is what happened to me. When I wrote them down, what I wanted to achieve out of life, the majority of which I have achieved, not all of them, but the majority of which I have achieved. In fact, I have achieved far more than what I'd written. And what happened was, when I wrote it, it was how I was. It's how I felt after I wrote it. That was truly amazing. It almost felt to me as if I was 50% closer to them than I was before. It was truly an amazing feeling. And I want to say to you is, find your purpose. Find your calling. And Clive made mention, when you are a person of purpose and you know where you're going, you don't get sidetracked very easily. I have a television. I have a remote control on my table. Listen to me carefully. I have a remote control right here. And I have not pressed that button on my remote in the last 4 weeks. I have been so focused on my purpose and what I have got to do. And I'm not saying watching TV is wrong. I watch a little bit of TV when I go downstairs to spend some time with my wife and the children, and the TV's on. I watch a little TV. When I come back up here, I'm so purpose driven. For you to distract me would be almost next to impossible. And it's a very powerful point that Clive bring out, is to find your purpose and work it. Work your purpose. Work it. Don't worry about the finances. Don't worry about, if God is with you, God will make a way. There's a saying that says that if God gave you the vision, he will give you the provision. Let me say this as well. You know, in writing my first book, it was truly the most remarkable thing for me because I didn't have the money back then. Didn't have the money, and just didn't have it. And I could hardly barely write anyway at those times, and I didn't have the confidence. But when you hear the story, it truly is amazing to me. But I remember saying to myself, don't worry about the price of the book. Just keep writing. When I finished, I saw a business card on my table that was there for, must be at least better part of a year. And I'll never met, the guy's name is Tony. And I'll never forget what happened. I'm broke. I ain't got no money. And I need some work now because I was concentrating on the book. So I saw the card on the table and a guy called Tony. He works for a company, train company. And I phoned him. And I thought I would put on my American accent. You know, I love Americans. I put on my American accent, my American style of presentation, if you like, if you want. Hey Tony, how you doing? This is Errol Williams. Do you remember me? And he says, do I remember you? Of course I remember you. I was just talking about you recently. I'm just trying to tell you about when God gives you a vision, he'll give you the provision. He said, do I remember you? Of course I remember you. We were just talking about you in our staff meeting because he had heard me speak for 20 minutes in a conference I spoke at, and he was impressed with it. So he brought it to his staff meeting several months later, and he said, Errol, we are going through real challenges in our company right now, and we need someone to come and motivate our staff, and we thought of you. Do you have any time? Oh Lord, I tried to kind of style it out as if to say I'm really busy, you know, and you know, I see if I can fit it in type of attitude. So I set a date with him and I went down. And he says to me, when can you start? He doesn't know my address. He doesn't want to see my CV. He's only heard me speak for 20 minutes. And he's asking me for dates for training courses. And he's asking me, how much am I charging? So I said, Tony, I'll charge you $450 a day. And it was for one whole week. So it was for 6 days. So you can work that out yourself. It was over £2,000 a week and so on, which would work out to over £100,000 for the year if I did every week, which is not going to be the case, but that's what was in process. So I did 2 weeks for him and charged him, made £5,000 in those 2 weeks. And you got to understand, this is over 20 years ago. So he says, Errol, it is just phenomenal what we have received. And we just need more. Do you have any more dates? So I said some dates. And he looked at me and he says, Errol, you're not happy. I said, no, I'm not. I'm not happy at all, Tony. He says, why not? This is after I presented him the invoice for the next set of training. I says, because I'm giving you far more than I'm charging you. I'll never forget what Tony did. I'm talking about when God gives you a vision, he provides the provision. You know what this gentleman did in this train company? I'm charging him £450 a day, 20 odd years ago. He took the invoice and he tore it up and threw it down and says, charge us what you think you're worth. Oh Lord, I'm still laughing today. Well, I certainly charged them what I thought I was worth, which was £1,000 a day, which was what my, and you know what, it's interesting going back to purpose. I got to share this with you and then let you go. I just want to come back to purpose. I want to tell you what one of my goals were. Now, I don't know if I'm able to do this. Let me see if I can do this. I'm going to show you what one of my goals were, and you're not going to believe this. And I'm sure you would. You wouldn't think I'm lying to you, do you? I'm going to show you. I had a goal And I thought it was a very good goal at the time. I didn't think there's anything wrong with the goal. And I felt that it's a proper goal until I worked it out and realized I made a mistake. I'm gonna show it to you. It's just gonna show it to you on my iPad. That's all. And I know that some of you are still there. Right. This is what I said. This is around 19. This is around 19. Let's go back a bit. 1984. That it was around that time when I set this goal. And I didn't realize what did. I said, I am going to continue studying and working on myself until I am worth 1p per second. That's what I said, 1p per second. Now, 1p per second doesn't seem a lot of money. You see, I didn't work out what I had said. Because if I had worked out what I had said, I would have said probably 1p per minute. And then when I went and worked it out, what I really was saying was this: I would be worth 864 pounds per day. When you work out basically the 1p per second over how many seconds and divide it by this, that, it worked out at 864 pounds per day. And I thought to myself, I made a mistake. But I decided to leave it. But I kept on working myself. How? I didn't go to college. I have no master's. I have no degree. I have no certificate. I have no anything. I don't have anything. I just don't have anything. I'm a lie. I've got a BA. I just remembered. No, not a Bachelor's of Art. Born again. I just remembered I got a BA. I'm born again. Right. Now, so when I, back in 1996, 97, charging £1,000 per day, I just dawned on me, I had achieved that. You see the power of setting goal, the power of having a purpose, the power of knowing. I went into another company. I won't necessarily mention the company, and they asked me, Errol, this is around 15 years ago, and they said to me, Errol, how much do you charge? What would it cost us for this leadership course you're going to do for us? And I didn't tell them. I took them to the bar. And that's what I did. I took them to the bar. No. Not alcohol. Not beer. Not lager and lime. Benefits, advantages, and result. I told them what the benefits was going to be, what the advantages was going to be, and what the result was going to be after I delivered the training for them. And during that, I was able to charge them $2,000 per day. I'm not sure how much I'm worth today, but I want you to notice this. People like Les Brown. I don't know if you ever heard of Les Brown. I don't know if you ever heard of Anthony Robbins. These guys are charging over 40K, 20K per day to corporation. This is how good these guys are. And yeah, I'm not sure how much I'm worth today, but if you want me to come and do some training for you, then my secretary will let you know how much I'm charging. I'm only joking. Anyway, there's some truth in that actually, because my secretary will tell you. But the point I'm making in all of this, as I keep on saying I'm closing, is work on yourself. Work in yourself. Now, what 3 areas should you work on in yourself? I'm going to give it to you. And Clive would tell you the same. We call it ASK. Okay, you want to work on your ASK, right? What is ASK? All right, let's do that in green. First of all, you want to work on your attitude. Okay, you want to work on your attitude. Uh, yeah, attitude. That's an I up here. Then you want to work on your skills. Yes, you want to make sure you work on your skill, whatever you're good at. And I must point out, Clive is a musician, actually. He's very good. I think he plays the bass. Very good, actually. And finally, knowledge. Now, the more you work on your ASK, your attitude, your skills, and the knowledge, is the more you develop in your potential. Is the more money you'll make, the more powerful you become, the more confident you become, and the more people want to be in your presence. Let me say it again. The more you work on your attitude, your skills, and your knowledge, is the more you're worth. Because Jim Ron says, earning is attached to your learning. Oh, this is powerful stuff. And, so you want to work on your attitude. And the more you work on your attitude, your skills, and knowledge, the more you earn, the more powerful you become, the more confident you become, and the more people want to be in your presence. Now, listen to this carefully. If your attitude stinks, if your attitude stinks, nobody wants to live with you, work with you, play with you, or go to the church with you, or even the mosque. Said it again. If your attitude stinks, nobody will want to live with you, work with you, play with you, or go to the mosque with you. Some ladies were talking to me once, and they were saying, I can get any man I want. And I said, you're probably right. You're probably right. Oh, yes, you're probably right that you can sleep with any man you like. You're probably right. But it's whether they will live with you or not. That's the key. Yes, you can sleep around if you want to. You can sleep around with much men. But it's whether they will live with you is the key. So I want to say this to you. Talking about resilience, talking about developing yourself, working on yourself. Develop your ASK. And the more you develop your ASK, the more things are going to work out for you. Now, don't leave your ASK. Please do not leave your ASK to the development of the company or the government. People saying, well, it's not enough money. Well, I'm going to introduce you to the university I go to. And I want to show you how much I pay in that university. So are you ready? I'm going to put this in gold because this is gold advice. I'm going to show you the university that I've been going to for the last 10. But he said, but Errol, I thought you never went to college. Well, my apologies. I did go to university, and it's the University of YouTube. I'm sure you've heard of that university. That's the university that I attend. I go there every day. Before I wrap up, and I always, whenever I finish working here, I have to wind down. So my way of winding down is going to the university for an hour. I lie down in the bed with my iPad playing chess and at the university, and I'm listening to some people and so on. So yeah, that's my university, and I hope you join me at my university sometime. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. I know I've gone over, and thank you guys for joining me. We talk to each other as it seems like we talk. Yes, just making sure. Thank you all very, very much, guys. And appreciate you guys staying so long back with me. I think I talk too much. My wife tells me I talk too much. And I said, but babes, I get paid for talking. She laughed and she went about her business. Yeah, I do get paid for talking. Anyway, guys, thank you very much. By the way, I'm going to announce on Monday that we are offering a service now in our church, and it's called Virtual Funeral Service. All right, Virtual Funeral Service. I think I have a website that I want to show you guys, so you guys can see. Yeah, it's a virtual funeral service, and it's just a service that we're now providing in our local church, and you might be interested in it, and you may If you the web address is cogop.com/virtual /virtual cogop.com/virtual, and we'll be sending out the leaflets later. So as you can see, basically it's a funeral service that we provide. It's going to cost, obviously, and we provide live streaming, live commentaries, professional slideshows, tributes, and social media tributes within the production. So it's and a lot more about us and the service we provide. And if you want to see an example of what we have done before, these are example of live streamings that we have done. 3 of them has been funeral. This is our women's conference, and the women's conference was truly outstanding, that we did for the women's ministry department. But these were the funeral services that we provided, slideshow and all kind of stuff, tributes that's added to that, and it's all there on YouTube. So take a look at the page, COGOP, and the contact details is right there at the bottom. You can actually call me, email me, and so on. So if you know anyone who's interested in virtual funeral service, get them to go to the webpage and contact us, and we will help them out. There's a lot of people who are needing this service. We got a massive team of people who are working, so we can do 2 in 1 day. We can do 2 in 2 days. You know, it's just the way we organize to do it. We've done it before. We're well experienced, and we know what we're doing. We've got the resources, the knowledge, and so on. So if you're interested in a virtual funeral service, it's a cost. We do charge for it. And we can do it anywhere in the world. So it doesn't mean it matter if someone from Dubai wants it done. We can do it right here from London. I can do it right here from my seat. I can actually, deal with that funeral service. Doesn't matter where in the world they are, America. And this is virtual. This is the power of technology. So a virtual funeral service is available, and we are ready to go to offer more comfort to people in that area. So thank you very much for listening. I'm going to now close out, and I just wanted to check, if you haven't registered yet for the course, you better, I'm going to close it tonight. I think I'm going to close it tonight. So let me give you the address, where to go now. So it's bit.ly/COGOP56. I think that's the web address. That should come up in a moment. Oh, no, I didn't. So I didn't put it in right. So let's go back and then do that. So it's bit.ly/COGOP56. Now, you tell me you're not going to show up and see what's up. Oh, there you are. That was quick. So all you have to do is go to bit.ly/ and I think we got a few spaces left. We are just under 100. So guys, look forward to seeing you guys. Take care of yourself. I've got to get some rest now to get up in the morning to be in that course, because I want to learn something. Pastor Lloyd Gordon will be teaching, and also the wonderful Sister Carol Clark and others, and I'm looking forward to it. So you guys have a fantastic night, beautiful night. Don't forget to make sure you have it in your diary, right? That our men's conference is next week, right? You do have that in your date, the 13th of June, right? 4 o'clock to 7, and it's open to everyone. We're not doing any registration. You just come straight on in, and we'll be there to welcome you. So thank you very much, guys. Have a fantastic night. If you want to join our Sunday service, that is COGOP Wembley right over here. You can see the ID 150-234-447. 150-234-447. And it's 9:30 to 11:30. But we prefer people to go to their own services. If ours start earlier than yours, come and join us. And we would look forward to welcoming you too. Thank you very much, guys. Have a fantastic night, a fantastic weekend. Stay safe, stay focused, and stay faithful. Thank you all for watching, and good night.